Welcome, everybody, to this episode of The Monthly Blend, a monthly video podcast brought to you by Next, powered by Shulman Rogers and the Connectpreneur community. I'm Tian Wong. I'm the founder and host of the Big Idea Connectpreneur community. We are a global community of over 35,000 investors, founders, and business leaders. And I'm also the CEO of Opus 8. And we help companies and fund managers raise money through our community of over 4,000 accredited private investors, angels, and family offices throughout the United States. Along with my co-host, Anthony Millen, who is the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, we are thrilled to bring to you this monthly video podcast, which covers trends, information, and fascinating interviews with game changers and newsmakers here in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore Metroplex. Anthony and I started this podcast about 3.5 years ago as a way to increase awareness of cool, innovative happenings in our region, to break down silos, and to serve as a mechanism to do our part to help bring the region together and foster innovation and entrepreneurship here. Today, we're going to be talking with Jeff Ajluni, who's the founder and CEO of Fusion Sports and Entertainment, about the region's sports and entertainment ecosystem. Jeff is a perfect guest for us today, given his tremendous background across 4 major sports and numerous professional teams and franchises. Jeff, welcome. And would you like to say a few words about yourself and your background, please?
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for doing this. I'm a big fan of your podcast. I've been listening to it for a while, so I'm glad we can be connected. I'm a DC resident. I've lived here for 10 years. However, I'm a Michigan native. I grew up just outside of Detroit. I started my career in sports with the Detroit Red Wings in the early 90s, which, if you're a hockey fan, you probably know that's a very special time to have been with the Red Wings. I started working for the Red Wings in 91. A few months after I started there, the Ilitch family, the owners of the Red Wings, bought the Detroit Tigers. And for the next 9 years, I experienced quite a exciting time in my career, having been with the Red Wings for a couple of Stanley Cup victories. It was a very special time. I then moved on and ran corporate partnerships for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was with them for 12 years. Also a very exciting time in my career because the Buccaneers won a Super Bowl while I was there. So you can see the trend. It doesn't last forever. While I was actually with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Glazier family, who owns the Buccaneers, they bought Manchester United, if not the biggest, one of the biggest soccer clubs or sports clubs in the world. And I oversaw their corporate partnership development globally as well. So I was working for the Buccaneers and Manchester United at the same time. And my career progressed with a number of different teams. I went on as chief revenue officer for the Detroit Pistons. I spent some time with the Jacksonville Jaguars, also the St. Louis Blues. And then I moved here actually to Washington to start a division for Fox Sports when Fox was looking to expand a new multimedia division working with college brands. So I came here initially to work with Georgetown University. That took me to expand that platform with other college brands like Auburn, Michigan State, Villanova. I left sports for a brief period of time and then went back and was with DC United for a few years. And then I left about a year ago and started my own consulting business.
Wow, what a great background. I would love to talk to you about what's going on in college football right now, but I know that's not the purpose of our podcast. We'll have to do that separately. But I'd love to turn things over to my co-host, Anthony Millen, right now. Anthony is a serial entrepreneur. He's a venture capitalist, as well as being one of the nation's top startup attorneys. Anthony is the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers. Next is disrupting the way that legal services are being delivered to early stage companies. They have a unique fixed price structure, which allows for expert legal advice at a manageable cost. And in the last 3.5, 4 years, Next has been recognized numerous times with national awards, such as winning Legal Week's Startup Emerging Law Firm of the Year, Legal Week's Best Law Firm for Enabling Startup Success, as well as being a finalist for the American Lawyer's Most Innovative Law Firm Award. Anthony, congratulations and take it away.
Great. Well, thank you. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. It's Really exciting to have our listeners learn about the sports and entertainment ecosystem in this area. And one of the places I wanted to start is just to have you describe. You've been in a lot of different ecosystems and a lot of different sports. How would you describe the sports and entertainment ecosystem in the Washington, D.C. region, metro region, and beyond, and how that part of the ecosystem interacts and impacts our overall ecosystem?
The business is booming in the region. There is activity in the Mid-Atlantic region, which when I say that, I'm including Washington, D.C. and the whole corridor with Baltimore.
Yeah.
It's exploding in this area, unlike anywhere else in the country. And that's happening for a few different reasons. First of all, the infusion of some of the best investment and ownership in the country has happened in the past couple of years. When you look at Josh Harris buying the Commanders, David Rubenstein buying the Orioles, in addition to other owners like Ted Leonsis, for example, these are some of the best owners in the country, and they just happen to be in this market. The other thing is there's pent-up investment in this market. The Commanders facility coming back into Washington, the new stadium that's going to be developed, is going to be the single biggest sports project in the country, without question. And we can touch on the details of that in a moment. But that's not alone. The monumental sports development with Capital One Arena isn't just a redevelopment or renovation of an old building. It's basically building a new arena around an old one. And that's why it's a 3-year phased process. But also over in Baltimore, both the Ravens and the Orioles are both spending hundreds of millions of dollars in partnership with the state in renovating M&T Bank Stadium and Oriole Park at Camden Yards. All of this is happening in a very short period of time within the next 3 to 5 years. I'm quite confident you'll hear a lot of news around the Nationals doing a lot of work with Nats Park in the near future. So there's a tremendous amount happening at a massive scale in a short period of time in one place. And all of that creates tremendous ripple effects throughout the whole region, both from subcontractors, real estate development, businesses looking to sponsor or have premium hospitality options with the teams. All of this kind of affects the way business is done and happening in the region.
So when you look forward a few years and all of this comes together, it sounds as if you see this as a real epicenter for as you look even across the broader country.
Oh, absolutely. It's not that similar activity isn't happening in other markets. Certainly, the Bills are building a new stadium in Buffalo. Just recently, over in the past week or so, the Cleveland Browns got approval for a new stadium in Cleveland. The Tennessee Titans are building a new stadium in Nashville. The Oakland A's, the former Oakland A's, soon to be the Las Vegas A's, are building a new stadium right on the Las Vegas Strip. So this kind of activity and development is happening all over the country. What's fascinating is the amount of activity that's happening in one region, in one of the biggest markets in the country, with the amount of money that's in this market. It's pretty remarkable. And it goes well beyond just the teams themselves. For instance, the Commanders' new stadium coming back into an urban setting at the old RFK site isn't just plopping a stadium in some cornfield out in the middle of nowhere. It's going to affect the entire neighborhood and the whole city with redevelopment, with new activity, with rejuvenation. So it's incredibly exciting, and that can be said for other parts of development in the market.
And, as you described at the beginning, you've been involved in the sports industry and overlapping between sports and entertainment. This seems to be a really exciting time for entrepreneurship in sports. There are a number of major developments that have been happening across the industry nationally. Could you share just some of the insights that you have on some of these trends in both entrepreneurship and new areas of growth that are really driving this as a market segment that has so much potential?
Sure. There are a number of areas that are evolving in sports and maturing right before our eyes. The biggest is being technology, without question, as it affects everything in our society. But specifically, as it relates to sports, technology is giving a platform for major advertisers, sponsors, media outlets to really measure performance. For example, when I started in the business, I started out selling sponsorships, selling signs in stadiums and arenas. And there was no science behind it. It was really ego driven. It was status driven. Brands wanted to be part of the action. Today, brands now can measure what kind of return on investment they're getting through technological advancements, through data measurement. And there's a whole industry behind that never existed before. In fact, one of those companies is called Zoomph, and they're located right here in the region. They're a leader in that technology. So brands that are curious about measuring what kind of return they're getting from their sponsorship activity or media activity with sports can go to a company like Zoomph and get an answer to their question. The other thing that's fascinating is the sophistication that goes into sports venues today. They're not just round edifices with seats inside of them where people go and watch sports anymore. There's a lot of sophistication that goes into them, appealing to all types of different market segments, from the highest end to just the average consumer that wants to take in one game or two a year with their friends and family. So when you go into a stadium or arena today, particularly the newest ones that are being developed, there are all kinds of segments of the building that appeal to those different markets. And the amount of thought and entrepreneurship that goes into designing these buildings, from development firms, design firms that specifically relate to that business, is pretty remarkable. Another one is Gensler, who specialize in stadium and interior designs for premium hospitality areas. Company like Gensler is very active in that space and playing a major role in the Capital One arena development.
And for, a lot of our audience are entrepreneurs as well, which you've touched on as it relates to a lot of the peripheral opportunities around some of these new stadiums and around technology. For founders who are really interested in this particular market segment in sports and entertainment, and particularly in our region, what are some of the things that they could do to learn more about this particular market and to try to interact with or benefit from this massive growth that you've just described today? If you were advising young entrepreneurs who were getting started and this is an area they're very interested in.
Well, I can't help but mention an event that I'm hosting coming in December 17th at the Willard Hotel here in Washington. I'm hosting an event called Power Brokers Mid-Atlantic Sports Summit that's going to address many of the things you're asking, Anthony. We'll have the presidents of all the major sports teams speaking at that conference, but that's only about 50% of the programming. The other will be discussion panels with leaders in various segments of the industry talking about sponsorship, premium hospitality, real estate development, technology, data and analytics. So all of these things will be discussed at that conference. But the sports world opens up a whole plethora of opportunities for entrepreneurs. We talked a bit about the Commanders development. Again, that's not just a stadium development. That is going to be a reimagining of an entire part of the district. So it's going to affect the entire neighborhood. And there is going to be ripple effects from that. Various types of commercial real estate, mixed use development. So offices, hotels, restaurants, obviously residential. That whole part of the district is going to look totally different in 5 years. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I want to be part of something exciting and I intermingle with any of those types of aspects, I would definitely look at opportunities there. But it doesn't just stop with a project of that scale. The same can be said for what's happening in Baltimore around M&T Bank Stadium and Oriole Park at Camden Yards. The neighborhoods around those two stadiums are going to be massively affected by the infusion of investment that's going into them. An example, if anyone is wondering what that looks like, just take a look at Navy Yard today. Navy Yard, as it is today, didn't exist before Nats Park was developed. And because of Nats Park, it totally reimagined that neighborhood. You're going to see that happening at the RFK site on steroids, essentially.
That is very exciting for young entrepreneurs to hear and think about. I'm going to hand this back over to Tien.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And that's really tremendous, Jeff. By the way, since you answered one of my questions already, I just wanted to throw a few quick fastballs at you. I know we didn't prep for this, but I would love to get your take on who you think will be the next coach at LSU football.
Oh, boy.
Honors there.
I'm not going to lie. I am not an expert in the college ecosystem, so I'm going to pass on that one. I think my answer would make me sound way too ignorant.
All right. Well, the FBI and the NBA have been in the news lately. You care to comment on the gambling situation and how the proliferation of all this online betting, which has undoubtedly led to a multiple increase in the valuation of these franchises. You want to comment a little bit about that situation and what we can do to mitigate that in the future?
That's a serious issue. Serious. As unfortunate as that is, obviously, let's see how it all plays out. I think some good can come of it, because if there was any lax in keeping an eye on that, it's going to significantly elevate the importance of integrity in that space with all the leagues. So obviously, what couldn't have been imagined a few years ago, meaning the commingling of sports betting, and that whole industry, many would remember that not so long ago, the leagues wouldn't even host an event in Las Vegas out of fear of any kind of intermingling of the two industries. But today, it's all kind of wrapped into one. So I think if anything good comes of this, it's going to put a jolt into the leagues and the player associations to police things in a strong way, because if you lose integrity of the game, you've pretty much lost everything.
Yeah, no, for sure. And before we get into another serious question, what are your thoughts about the inflation of valuations of these franchises? Like, Steve Ballmer bought an NBA franchise for $2 billion, and I think that was 5x the prior, or 3 or 5x the prior highest thing. I see the Giants are valued at like $10 billion.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago, they might have been valued at $3 billion. Are we in a bubble right now, or what's driving this stuff?
I'm surprised it actually hasn't happened earlier, because of just the role that sports plays in our communities and our lives and everything that we do. But there's a lot of things driving it. It's the evolution of sports media and kind of the battlefield that media entities have to gain rights with the leagues. And once those media rights climb, the values of the leagues and the teams climb. That's one of the big reasons why. But do I think it's a good thing? Well, if I was an owner, I think it's a damn good thing. I don't think it hurts the overall sports landscape at all. As far as it actually just kind of increases the stakes for people to be competitive and deliver greater products and experiences to fans. The interesting thing is, because of the value skyrocketing, the answer to that situation has created a situation where the values keep skyrocketing because of infusion of private equity money. I don't think clubs trading on open stock markets is far off. The reason being is anyone that's lucky enough to own a professional sports team, particularly with the 4 big leagues today, would have trouble selling that team to any individual, frankly, because how many people can really afford them? Which caused the leagues to open up the opportunity for the owners to sell portions of those leagues to investment funds. And I think the only natural thing next is selling off portions of teams in the open market to fans.
Yeah, like the Celtics.
That happens today. It's not unusual, but on a bigger scale, I suppose.
Yeah, bigger than like the Celtics or the Packers, I guess. But back to you. So give us a little bit on Fusion Sports and Entertainment. What, aside from the event that's coming up, what do you do and who do you serve?
Yeah, I left the sports team side of the business about a year ago. I saw an opportunity to start my own consulting business, and I primarily work with brands and help them navigate the landscape of primarily sponsorships, because that's my background, assisting companies with their sponsorship portfolios, engaging with the teams, looking at inventory, what makes sense for them, helping them negotiate deals with the teams, essentially using my 30 plus years of institutional knowledge on the team side to assist teams to get the most out of their investments. And part of that process was also starting another division within my business, which is hosting sports business conferences. And the first is here in Washington, as I mentioned before, not just because I live here, although that makes it a little convenient, but mainly because of everything we talked about, the explosion of the industry in this market. But I also plan on hosting similar events in other markets that I'll announce in the near future.
That's awesome. And if someone, again, wants to get involved or attend the summit, how can they learn more about the summit and you? Is there a website?
Yeah. Well, my business website is fusionsportsанdentertainment.com. Anyone that's interested in engaging with my consulting firm, I'm happy to meet with them, and they can contact me through there. That's fusionsportsанdentertainment.com. As far as the event, the website for the event is powerbrokersevents.com. And again, that's powerbrokersevents.com, one word. The event is December 17th, Wednesday, December 17th, at the Willard Hotel here in Washington, D.C. We have a real heck of a lineup. Mark Klaus, the president of the Commanders, Jim Van Stone, the president of Monumental Sports and Entertainment, which is the Capitals, the Wizards, and the Mystics. Katie Griggs, the president of the Orioles, and Sashi Brown, the president of the Ravens, will all be keynote speakers at the event. But in addition to them, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have a number of major corporate leaders within the market who will be taking part in discussion panels on topics that range from sponsorships, premium hospitality, sports media, real estate development around sports facilities, data and analytics, the evolution of sports media, which is going through a major kind of upheaval right now. So it's going to be a fascinating day for anybody that's either involved in the investment of sports or are curious to learn more about it.
Fantastic, Jeff. Thank you so much, and good luck with the conference. It sounds amazing. With that, I'd like to turn things over back to Anthony, who can close us up. But Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Great. Well, Jeff, the summit sounds, as TN sounds, incredible for anyone who has any interest or is curious about this particular area, and we really encourage anyone listening who has that interest to attend. We want to thank you so much for joining us. This was really insightful and informative, and also just shows how exciting a time it is, not only for people directly involved in sports and entertainment in this region, but a lot of peripheral opportunities that you described today. And it sounds as if there's going to be so much to look forward to. And we again thank you for sharing all of that with us today.
It was great. Thank you very much for inviting me. I enjoyed it.